What is up, y'all? We are going to do a Jonny Boats Bass 100 6-month review in this video. We're not going to be fishing today. This is a video that I said I was going to make, I believe, when I very first bought the Jonny Boats Bass 100 more than 6 months ago. And if it wasn't that video, it was like right after that video. And so we're going to do the Jonny Boats Bass 100 6-month review. These videos tend to do pretty well on my channel, so I think a lot of you will want to see this. And a lot of you actually have Jonny Boats yourselves. So, oh, there's a spider on here. Oh, there was a spider on here. He's dead. So I'm in the garage right now. And those of you that don't have a Jonny Boats Bass 100, this is probably going to be all new information for you. So, you might be interested in this. All right, so when you do review videos, I feel like you're not doing them justice unless you talk about all the negatives especially. So that might sound like I'm going to bash the Jonny Boats Bass 100. So before I start bashing my kayak, I just want to say that this is a really good kayak. I think it might even be the best kayak at the price range that it is at. It's only $900. It's very stable. It moves pretty fast. It's not super heavy, but it still supports 400 pounds. It has a flat back transom, so you can put an outboard motor on it, and then you can put a trolling motor up front, and that would be the ideal way to use it. I don't even use mine that way, so I feel like I'm underutilizing mine, and I still have a lot of positive things to say about this kayak. I caught some good bass in this kayak. I'll show a couple right now.
Holy cow! Oh, it's a big bass. Oh! Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! Look at that bass! I don't even know if it's all in the camera. Oh! It's a giant over here. Oh! Oh! God! Look at that fish! Look at that bass! Oh my God.
All right, so those are a couple good bass I caught in this kayak. I caught my PB in this kayak. I'm really glad I bought this kayak. I'm really glad I got into a kayak, period. I do want to kayak bass fish tournaments the upcoming season. I haven't joined the league yet or anything. I have a lot of things going on that I need to do before I can do that. I want to do that though, and I do feel like the way I run this right now, I put a trolling motor on the back transom. That's not going to cut it in the tournament situations. I think I'm going to need spot lock, and I'm going to need to be able to control something with like a remote so I can keep fishing and not have to handle the trolling motor manually. So I could mount a Motor Guide XI3 up front, $1,500 trolling motor, but it has spot lock. That is an option. Another option is that I upgrade to a bigger, better kayak that's more suited for tournaments. I'm looking into all those things, and that will be down the road. So I might get out of the Jonny Boats Bass 100, but at the same time, I feel like I've underutilized this. I haven't put an outboard motor on the back yet, so I don't want to. All right, but let's talk about the Jonny Boats Bass 100 and talk about the negatives especially. All right, so let's just start off at the front. We got this nice big handle up here. That's a nice handle. It's a good handle, no complaints there. There is these little rod tip guards. I removed them because I don't put the rods inside the kayak, inside the Jonny, because it's not very wide inside the Jonny, and frankly, the very first time I used the Jonny, my Shimano SLX paired with a Lew's rod fell out. Even though it was inside here, it fell out the kayak and dropped to the bottom. So after that, I started using rod leashes for all my rods and stuff, so that never happened again. So that is a negative. It's not super wide on the inside. The only kayak that I know really that is good for putting rods on the inside is like the Hobie Pro Anglers, and those are like over $4,000. Those are completely different price range. They might be considered the best kayak, fishing kayak out there. The Old Towns get a lot of respect as well, autopilots. And so Right now I have these mounted into the female inserts, and these go with a stand-up bar that I made. But I will say that this is made in like Taiwan or somewhere, and some of the details aren't the greatest on the Jonny Boats Bass 100. So if you look, you'll see this one screw is sitting higher than the other one. That's because it won't go down all the way, because the angle of that female insert for the screw to go into is not perfectly aligned. So you're going to want to look at those little details when buying the Jonny Boats Bass 100. But honestly, 3 out of the 4 go down. So I don't think it's like a deal breaker for anyone, because it still works. It still screws in enough. But it's just one of those things where you can tell there's a little bit something lacking in the details. You know, it doesn't stand up to that made in America quality, because I believe it's Taiwan, made in Taiwan. I could be wrong about that. Then we get to this pod section. All right, so this pod section, there's nothing wrong with the pod. I did hear, I never bought the trolling motor for the pod because I didn't hear good things about it. I heard you're better off just putting a trolling motor on it and running it that way. Now I will say that it sounds like at iCast, Jonny Boats heard this and they addressed it. Now how well they addressed it, I don't know. If they want to send me one to test it, I will gladly test it. But they have one now that has the trolling motor in the pod, and it has a remote, which is that's what you want right there. It does have a wire. It's not wireless remote, but I guess that's maybe better in some situations, because if you don't have Bluetooth, like if you're having connection issues like with other stuff, I don't know that you would, but that could be a problem. But if it's wired to it, directly to it, then you won't have any issues. So I'm curious about the new pod system. I will say that once you get up to a certain speed, water will kind of come up out the bottom of this pod. So if you plan on putting an outboard motor on the back, what I've noticed everyone does with this Jonny is they fiberglass the pod area, because in this pod area, you take that pod out, you can see down to the water in this area. So people fiberglass the bottom of that. I haven't fiberglassed the bottom of mine because I have a 35-pound thrust, and water has never gushed out that front of the pod except once when I had the wind behind me and I was really moving. Other than that, and water's never really come up out of that pod. And there's good scuffer plugs in here. It drains well, so it's not the end of the world if water's coming up. But it's not something you want to deal with, want to see. So there's a little bit of flaw in the design there, but again, it doesn't really affect your fishing unless you have an outboard motor on it, and then you just fiberglass the bottom. So Jonny Boat is crazy stable, has a crazy nice seat. This seat is so comfortable. That's why it took me so long to get into kayak fishing. I love standing and fishing. I never thought I could sit for 8+ hours. Honestly, I don't even stand and fish in this. I rarely stand and fish in the Jonny. It's comfortable sitting, and I still catch the fish from the sitting position. So I'm always sitting. But I can stand if I want to, you know. So I do sometimes. But I love sitting in this kayak, surprisingly. So it's kind of odd. It's kind of odd that I enjoy it so much, but I do. And so they have a really comfortable seat, really good seat. You know, every company has seats and they have some kind of tearing issue. People have said that. I'm 240 something currently and have been in this, and I sit down on that seat hard sometimes and everything, and I have no tearing issues on mine. I feel like I might have seen someone said that they started making new seats, so they made them to a better quality, better standard. Don't quote me on that, but I feel like I heard someone say that or read someone say that on like the Jonny Boats Facebook group. I could be wrong about that. But if that's the case, I think I got the newer version when I got my Jonny, because no issues, and you know, I got a big butt sitting on that sucker pretty hard sometimes, and there's no tears on it. So it's a nice seat. It has a bunch of different levels of adjustment. You sit lower, you're a lot more stable in it. You sit higher, you get to sit higher and fight those fish better, but you're not as stable. I do know I'm always in the high position. I just like being higher. And I do notice if I'm reaching down over to lip the fish or release the fish nicely into the water, it does feel a little tippy sitting high. But I've never flipped the kayak or anything like that. And I prefer using the net. And if you sit in the high position, you might prefer using a net also. I will say that. All right, I almost passed this, but they got a nice long track right here, a mounting track. And I think that's great. It really is great, especially on a smaller kayak. And then even better is the fact that they have a mounting track in the back. That is awesome. You'd be surprised when I look at a lot of kayaks. There's a lot of kayaks out there that are considered good kayaks that don't have a mounting track in the front and back of the kayak. And I just think that's a swing and a miss for companies. I think you need a front and back track mount. There's just so many things you can put on your kayak and ways you can rig up your kayak, and you want to do stuff that by not putting that back there, that's kind of a swing and a miss. And Jonny Boats did it, so they did not swing and a miss. There's good handles here on the side, but I noticed that this plastic wore off. I've got a chunk of plastic missing right here, and that was from the very first time that I got the Jonny Boats Bass 100. I bought the Jonny Bass 100. I strapped it to the top of my car, and I brought it home. And on the way home, that wore off on there. And I've strapped it to my car 100 times since then, and I've never wore off any plastic except for that very first time I bought the Jonny. So I thought that was weird. I think the material for this is slightly different than other kayaks, the plastic used for this. So because I did scrape off some of this plastic that very first time I had it, I've been very babyish. I've babied this kayak quite a bit since I've bought it. I do not launch it on a boat ramp and drag it across the cement and stuff like that. I do not do that. I want to minimize the scrapes and the wear and tear on the plastic on the bottom as much as I can. There are things that you can buy and put on the bottom of your kayak to prevent wear and tear on your kayak, but in my case I just baby it. I always launch it from grass or something in a softer area and stuff like that. I rarely even drag it through the grass. I use the cart, but I will say there's a flaw in the design of the cart. The cart is made to be put at the back of the Jonny Boats Bass 100. And sure, it's only 77-pound kayak and it's only 10 feet long. In fishing kayak terms, that's not a lot of weight and that's not very long. But it is hard to carry this from spot to spot with your cart at the back. And forget about it if this is like loaded up with a lot of stuff. You do not want to do that to yourself. So if you have if you have a cart that like you can put in the middle of the kayak, it's easier to lug around a kayak when the cart is in the middle and not the back. So I think Jonny Boats missed the mark on that by putting the cart position at the back of the Jonny. I think you're better off buying a cart that you can put on any kayak and you can put it in the middle of the Jonny. I think that's going to make it a lot easier for you to move around. But if you're like me, you pull up to where you're going to launch the kayak and you put it right there in the grass, right there next to the water, and you load up your kayak and you just pull it across the grass, a couple feet, couple yards into the water, then you'll be all right. And I try to do that everywhere I go. And so, but I will say the cart position, I should say. There's nothing wrong with the design of the cart, but the position of the back, that's not good. There's really good scuffer plugs up front. You need that. There's a nice big one here in the back of the front area, and that drains. We have these rod holders that have this leash that hooks over your handle and really holds your rod down in to those rod holders. They are not going anywhere, and you have 2 of those rod holders. That's great. But this back area, I do not like the fact that it does not have a scuffer plug. Water will fill up back here, and it really makes you nervous when you're out on the water and you see a bunch of water back there because you got a lot of weight in your boat. That makes you nervous, Now, maybe I have too much weight in the boat, but I'm just telling you what I'm telling you. You know what I mean? So What I did is I made this cheap transom mount, and what it does is it keeps water from flowing in the back, but at the same time there's a space for water that is in there to drain out. And so what happens is if you get water in the back of your kayak, then you just gun it with your trolling motor or your motor, and then the water will rush out the back. So that's how I get water out of the back, but it makes you kind of nervous to do that. And I also think that this transom mount protects the plastic. The Jonny Boats Bass 100 does not paddle very well. Do not buy this kayak to paddle it. That is not what this is designed for. This is not a paddle kayak. So that's another thing. And then you see these bolts here. There's holes in the transom. So I didn't drill into the Jonny Boats Bass 100. I just put holes in the cutting boards and put the bolts through the cutting boards. And so I did not drill into the Jonny Boats. And then we have these nice handles in the back. They're great. Yeah, so a lot of good things about it. I will say I have been on the water with, Chris Mitchell fishing. He had an Old Town Autopilot 120. I've seen people move around on the water with an Outback, a Hobie Outback. I've seen people move around on the water with a Hobie PA Pro Angler 14. Those are like $4,000 plus kayaks. They look amazing moving through the water, and they create like no ripples on the water behind them. I don't think it really affects your fishing a whole lot, but I will just say it. The Jonny creates wakes. Like if you're only going a couple miles per hour, it still creates huge wakes in the water. The way it's designed, it really creates a lot of water movement. And other kayaks do not do that from what I've seen. So I just thought that was interesting and worth noticing. I don't think it really affects your fishing all that much. Yes, it can scare fish away and stuff, but honestly, in more experiences than not, I feel like it's triggered a bite, because the waves start moving around, those bait fish get pushed around, and the bass take advantage and they start feeding and start busting on stuff. And so I'll actually be creating wakes and be paying attention to stuff going on around me, and I see the bass start busting on stuff, and I'll chuck something in towards it. So I've actually used it to my advantage, but I just think it's worth mentioning. You can stand up really good in this for a 10-foot kayak. Great stability, great speed on the Jonny for a 10-foot kayak. Longer kayaks go faster. So when you think about that, it's pretty nice. Oh, and there's these pedals up at the front that you put your feet up against. I removed mine so I had more space for putting stuff in my Jonny. But I will say that you do feel like oh man, I got to put my feet on the ground, because just having your feet up in the air, not against anything, feels funky after a while. So I might put those back in there actually. And I just want to say that I am planning on doing my first kayak fishing season coming up, and I don't think the Jonny Boats Bass 100 is great for that unless I get the trolling motor in the pod that they just developed, or maybe I put a Motor Guide XI3 on here that has spot lock, and that would be easy. Where I have my stand-up bar screwed into, I can put a platform right there and bolt it to that, and then on that platform I can put the Motor Guide XI3 on there, and that will be perfectly fine. And that wouldn't be a bad setup for tournaments, because spot lock is really important when you're fishing competitively. But you could also put a Torpedo, an E-Propulsion, a Bixby, something like that, especially on the back. Outboard motors not really going to be accepted in any tournaments though. So I do feel like I'm not using the Jonny Boats Bass 100 to its full potential by not having an outboard, but you could, and I think you should. If you end up getting the Jonny Boats Bass 100, I think you should. I think to use this to its full potential, you need an outboard motor, and you need a trolling motor with spot lock. if you do that, you have a bass boat. You have a kayak that's a bass boat, you know? And so that's how I wanted to use it. But for tournaments, I can't do that, so I haven't even bothered to try and buy an outboard motor. And then now I'm on the fence of whether I get a motor guide on here and see if I can take Jonny to another level and fish tournaments. No one fishes bass fishing tournaments with them. That's the other thing, is I have to see if they'll even allow it, because the Jonny Boats is like a John boat, but it's a kayak. But truthfully, it's smaller than most kayaks in the fishing tournament leagues, so I don't see why they wouldn't allow it. But I haven't even joined the league yet. I have a lot of things I need to do before I do that, so we'll see when it comes to that. Yeah. And if I don't put a motor guide on here or get the new pod system, if I don't go that route, then I think what I'm going to do is bite the bullet and buy a bigger, better kayak for tournament fishing. If I wasn't doing tournament fishing, I'd have no reason not to be in this, you know? But how it is now in Florida, it's August. Florida is nuts. Florida has the most vegetation in the country. It is choked out everywhere. And there's only one or two kayaks that can really maneuver through this stuff. You know, these Hobies can be in 1 inch of water. And so the way I have the trolling motor mounted into the back, I can't even fish right now out of my kayak. And so that's a little disappointing, but that's only gonna be the case for those of you that are in Florida and trying to fish in like August and maybe July. You know what I mean? Like, so it's probably not really a deal breaker for many people. And then, you know, I don't know, I get a motor guide on the front. I can pull that up and get to. That's the other thing, is I don't like pulling the trolling motor up in the back and leaning into the back and getting the stuff like the grass out of the trolling motor, because I don't like water putting my weight at the back of the kayak and water come up in that back area because there's no scuffer plugs. Now, the second I drive away with the trolling motor, it drains out back there, so it's not a big deal, but it's just an uneasy feeling when water's filled up back there. I do not like that. But again, nitpicking. If I had another kayak, if I had a $4,000 kayak right now, I would be telling you a dozen things that aren't perfect about that. So just want to say that. So if someone's like, I don't know, you said a couple bad things about it, not getting the Jonny. It's a really good kayak. It's a really good kayak. So I do want to say that. You know, I caught my PB. I caught some good bass on it. And so I have no real complaints about the Jonny. At the end of the day, I've got hooked on kayak fishing because of the Jonny. So, you know, but now I'm just thinking how I'm going to proceed, because I do want to. The Jonny did its job. It got me hooked into kayak fishing at the $900 price point, and I now want to pursue tournament fishing, even though I still don't have experience compared to these guys that are in some of these kayak leagues. As far as fishing big waters and fishing out of kayaks and stuff, you know, I'm going to be at a disadvantage, but at the same time, I feel like, you know, just get out there, have fun, and try to be as competitive as you can. And so for me to be as competitive as I can, I either need to put spot lock on this or a different system other than my trolling motor in the back, because I'm holding. Right now I have a long arm on my trolling motor, and I'm manually controlling the trolling motor all the time. If I get the pod system, I'll be able to control it with the remote and fish a little better. If I get the Motor Guide XI3, I'll have spot lock and I'll be able to control it with a controller. So those things will make a big difference. Or I might go another route and get a different kayak for tournament fishing. So I'm considering all of those things right now, and yeah, I don't know what to do. If you're not gonna do the kayak tournament stuff, I've been in tournaments before in the past. I've done well. I've consistently been in the top 10 in the tournaments I have done, but I haven't done tournaments in a long time. So I would say that I feel like I could do well, but at the same time, we're just going to have to wait and see. You know, you think you can do this, that, and the other, but only time will tell. I know I'm missing something I need to say, and I don't really like storing my rods behind me, vertically behind me. I feel like it gets in the way of my overhand casts and some hook sets and stuff. I don't like that. So I actually developed a horizontal rod storage system on the side here, and it also holds my paddle. And so that works really well for me, and I might make a video just about that because I feel like that's really good. And you can't have this rod system without having the track mounts in the front and back. So I do think that's another reason why it's so great that the Jonny Boats Bass 100 has track mounts in the front and back. Not all kayaks have that. All right, so I think I talked about this quite a bit now. Got a lot of good things to say about it, but it's not a perfect kayak. But at the same time, at that $900 price point, it's pretty awesome, and I haven't even used it to its full potential. So that's my 2 cents. That's my 6-month review about the Jonny Boats Bass 100. I may be in this for another 6 months, another year. I don't know. We will see. Or I might go another kayak route. Maybe I'll stay in because Three Waters and Feel Free and Jonny Boats are like all the same company. They're all affiliated with each other. They're under the same umbrella or whatever you want to call it. Maybe I'll go the Feel Free route or something or another. Or maybe I will go to something else. I don't know. We will have to wait and see. All right, we're out. This is a long enough video. Peace.